of the Finance Committee stating very well that it's going to be hard for the government to drop this proposal because based on his calculations, this will give the government, give or take, about 55 billion in terms of funding that budget. What's your take on that? And secondly, when you're looking at the issues on compromise, when you're looking at a compromise now that we know it might not drop, what sort of percentage drop are we looking at or counter proposal that you would give for the same?
First of all, let me just say that as we look at the proposal that is there on the motor vehicle tax, our challenge is that, is this a wealth tax that they are levying against the people of Kenya, noting that capital gains tax just increased from 5 to 15%. Yeah. But irrespective of that, the reality that we want government to also see is it's raising the cost of living. We cannot say transportation is a luxury in this country anymore. Time is money. And we have more and more, because of devolution, people living outside the city coming to work within the city. So the question is also, how much more burden are you placing upon your people? Because at the end of the day, what will happen is that this cost is going to be passed down to the final consumer, particularly in the transportation industry and in the agricultural industry. And you know, the reality is most people, even private transport, when the cost is too high, most people, because it's compulsory, will go to third-party insurance, which also leaves the owner of the vehicle at a risk, because at the end of the day, when you get an accident, now what happens to your own vehicle or to yourself? And so the challenge with that tax is that at the end of the day, how is it benefiting the people? As much as you're looking at your crunching numbers and saying, yes, we'll make this great amount of money here for us, but how are you affecting the industry? Because now you're imposing upon the insurance companies to be the ones to collect this amount of money, because even if you look at the drawbacks, they'll be charged, they have to pay either 50% of the amount in the event that they don't collect it. Okay,
well, let me just come in as you continue to talk on the same. Now, of course, you've acknowledged that transportation is not a luxury, and this is a service that is being accorded to all Kenyans. But the question at the center of this is that at the end of the day, there has to be some sort of revenue generation more, considering Kerry over the past years has constantly not hit their targets. So where then do we draw that line and say that this is something that needs to be affected, because something has to give at the end of the day?
Our proposal is, of course, scrap it, but if government must put it in place, our proposal is to put it at 0.5% and further to exempt certain industries. Our proposal is to exempt manufacturing, agricultural, and the transport industry, because at least you will give reprieve to certain members of the public.
All right, Faith, I just need you to hold that thought. I'll be coming back to you shortly. Right now, we want to take a quick short break right here on Punchline. When we get back, we continue with the conversation on the Finance Bill 2024. Stick around.
Emotions, relationships.
Kumbe mama, ulikuwa unafikiria kuolewa tena? Yaani unijali hata kidogo, wewe ni mbaya.
Dilemmas and complexities of life.
Mwanamke hamhitaji mwanaume ili aweze kuwa na furaha.
Love.
Vedika, kiukweli mimi nakupenda sana wewe.
Betrayal.
Mimi nilikupa kila kitu ambacho wewe ulikuwa unakihitaji. Lakini leo umeamua kunidanganya na kuusaliti uaminifu wangu.
And secrets.
Tafadhali usimwambie Sahil kuhusu hili.
Get ready for an emotional roller coaster ride filled with drama.
Sahil wangu yuko wapi? Nataka uniambie Sahil yuko wapi? Sijafanya chochote kile Sahil jamani.
Passion. And unforgettable moments. Don't miss Aapke Ajanase every Tuesdays to Fridays on your favorite TV station, K24.
Have you watched K24? We would love to hear from you. Send us your feedback on what you like, and what you don't like and why. You can use any platform to reach us. We can be reached on Facebook, SMS, Twitter, and WhatsApp.
Cheza kama wewe na cheza sita. Ushinde hadi mara 5,000 ya beti yako teke teke. Yes, and it's that simple. Dial *675#, cheza na 6 numbers kati ya 1 hadi 6, weka bet amount yako ushinde hadi mara 5,000 instantly. Cheza kama wewe na cheza sita na upate nafasi moja kati ya 4 ya kuwa mshindi. Dial *675# to play now. Over 18 only. Gaming is addictive. Play responsibly. This message has been authorized by the BCLB.
Well, welcome back to Punchline. For the interest of those joining us right now, the conversation has been on the Finance Bill 2024, and with me in studio is Faith Odhiambo, who's the Law Society of Kenya president. Faith, just before the break, you're talking about the compromise that you would like to see in the event that the government does not go back on the 2.5% motor vehicle tax. And just before the break, you're talking about 0.5%. Just pick it up from there.
Yes, so our proposal was 0.5%, at least to let Kenyans ease into the new changes or the new tax regime, because tax needs some level of certainty, even as members of the public, to also plan and organize yourself. And we propose that certain industries needs to be exempted, such as manufacturing, agricultural, and the transportation industry. The reality is transport is an essential facility. We cannot say that getting onto a matatu or a bus is a luxury. It's an essential facility to get you from one place to another. And so the reality is to at least cushion Kenyans, even as taxes continue rising in different sectors. Let's also have a way of easing in, that we don't just bang and we're thinking only numbers, but at the same time, how are you affecting the same population that you expect to continue raising taxes for you.
Okay, well, when you're looking at this conversation, of course, there are issues and arguments around the timing of aligning our tax regime with the national tax policy. People saying that it should be a 5-year period so that new taxes are not introduced every now and again, that we should just basically settling in on whatever has already been stipulated before. But then again, we have to be alive to the fact that times are changing and circumstances keep on altering. So where do we draw the line and say this is what needs to be kept, this is not what needs to be implemented? But then again, at the end of the day, we have to remember that Kerry has to raise revenue if in any case we're going to fund that budget without borrowing.
Well, the reality is, even as the government is considering that things are changing, but our pockets are not changing. We are suffering through the same economic downtime that everyone is suffering through. So if you'd be saying that things are getting better, life is easier for Kenyans, then we'd say, you know, well, we need to also pay taxes to support our government. But the reality is life is hard for everyone, particularly now. We're seeing more companies closing, we're seeing more people losing jobs because companies are trying to downsize. Cost of electricity is high. Cost of manufacturing in this country is high. And so when you see new companies are not opening, in fact, new companies are closing and some are moving, then the question government needs to ask itself is how can you spur production in your country? How can you have a market that is actually moving and growing? Instead of just levying taxes, at some point there'll be no more businesses to be able to tax. And you know, when people get to a certain level that they have nothing more to give, really. So you have to also have a balancing act. It's not just about collection. And I agree that there needs to be certainty. You know, even a private equity investor who comes to the country and is looking at, this is a small business, maybe I could come in, invest in 2-3 years or 5 years and get my investment back after. They look at certain things, market predictability, how is taxation regime in this country, to determine how much they give you and in terms of even how much interest they charge upon a business. But the level of unpredictability, even businesses that probably came in 2 years ago or 3 years ago, most likely will not be able to realize what expected profits they have, because our country keeps changing the taxes. We keep changing, even if you look at an example of even the excise duty on mobile financial services, just in the last financial act, the Finance Act 2023, it was reduced from 20 to 15%. Now it's coming back from 15 to 20%. So you don't even allow the market to ease in and even benefit from any reprieve you've given them. You change quickly in the market. So even an investor coming would be, why should I invest in a business in Kenya in an destabilizing taxation regime?
All right. Well, another issue that has not necessarily rubbed off too well on a lot of people is the issue on privacy. And when you talk about privacy, of course, the Data Protection Act 2019 comes at the center of this. And when you're looking at the proposals in the finance bill, that's section 51(2) is to be amended to basically see to it that KRA is exempted from the stipulations of that particular act. But you are of the idea that you do not support this cause. KRA might get to a point where they abuse it, and your biggest concern is you do not understand the definition of what they mean by necessary actions in terms of implementing these policies and getting the taxes. So on the KRA side, how would you argue then that how would they be in a position to see to it that businesses that turn over millions of shillings are constantly evading tax, and that is part of the reason as to why we cannot bridge that deficit in our budget? Well,
KRA always has its investigation arm, and apart from that, KRA is able to go when they feel that you're sort of evading tax, then they can seek court orders. They go through the normal procedure like any other institution would to seek to get orders to check your accounts and investigate and find if you're sending money offshore or raid your business if need be. But this blanket decision or change of the law to breach your constitutional rights under Article 31, rights to privacy, I feel it's a bit far-fetched. That KRA, like any other institution, even assets recovery, when they want to investigate, they also still go back to court to get court orders to investigate, and we've seen them freezing so many businesses. KRA as well has that right, and they can investigate and freeze all your accounts until they ensure they finish the investigations to determine. But having that blanket is an opportunity to infringe your right to privacy as a taxpayer, and it's a risk of data misuse. I think as taxpayers, we should not change the law to guilty until proven innocent, because now it opens for KRA a blanket to come in and check whatever they want. And also the misuse or the mischief that we feel would be there is that we have seen KRA before being used as a political target against individuals. And so we don't want that situation to arise, and therefore KRA as well must respect constitutional rights. They are courts for a reason. Courts can give orders if you give them adequate evidence to ascertain why you want access to someone's private accounts or business accounts, and courts have given orders before. So it gives a taxpayer the right to be heard. There's a fair playing field rather than one who is investigator, judge, jury, and he makes the final decision. And even the various proposals that have been made to change even the Tax Procedures Act raises also queries. So we'll be giving the Commissioner of Domestic Taxes too much power.
Well, let me just come in there, right? Of course, and it's a good thing I'm having the conversation with a lawyer, because there's a term that most lawyers use, especially in corporate law, is that we'll bury them in papers when we get to court. So probably the reasoning behind this is the fact that litigation derails a lot of issues that are supposed to be done and implemented way faster. You find that bureaucracy also plays into that place. So the thinking could be, why not empower this commissioner to see to it that he can go a further step, but then again there's a compromise into what extent they can actually access your data and them not being guided by that act. Do you see a compromise in this, or it should be rejected in totality?
I think it should be rejected in totality. As much as you argue that bury them in papers, KRA as well has a bevy of lawyers. KRA has a huge number of lawyers working for KRA that also go to court that are quite specialized in handling tax matters. And so I think that's an excuse that we shouldn't buy into. The current position is that onus is on the taxpayer to prove they have paid their taxes. So again, to go a step further and also open a blanket check that KRA can walk in and snoop into your data in whatever manner is open to abuse. We live in this country where we have seen KRA being used before and be abusing its powers. With regards to, we see a lot of rhetoric that you're being attacked because you're not in the right political position. So how much more would be now, the situations would be there that now KRA has also further powers to move in and check into your personal data without that referee of the court being able to say, red card, you've gone too far. We still need the courts to be able to stand for the rights of people of Kenya. As much as Article 24 says your rights could be curtailed within reasonable ambits, I believe that it's unreasonable for KRA to be allowed to openly, in a blanket check, be able to access your information and your data. The value of having courts that they must go before a court to prove their case is important to at least protect that taxpayer from any misuse or misabuse of power by the commissioner.
Okay, well, to my next proposal, which is among the proposals that you've given, you've appreciated that looking at the reasoning behind the amending of the Tax Procedures Act is to better revenue collection and basically improve that revenue. But you have an issue with what they want to do, especially with that section 59A that will basically give the commissioners more power, tying it to what we talked earlier on. But I want to look at this from a position of KRA constantly doing what they've been doing, because we are in a situation where we keep doing the same thing over and over and we're expecting different results. So where do we draw the line to see to it that we actually empower KRA to go ahead and for once actually hit those targets, but then again we maintain the guidelines of the Constitution and ensure that they operate? What is it that you feel should be done to KRA, but that still we empower them with whatever they believe can help them generate this revenue?
Well, let me start from a position of what happens currently. Now, KRA can assess and give you a notice. Let's say you're supposed to pay this amount of money. Then you can raise an objection. Obviously, you know what you're actually earning. So if KRA levies a higher tax than what you believe you ought to be paying, then you can raise an objection. Now, based on that objection, if you haven't filed a proper objection, then the commissioner of tax has to, within 40 days, respond raising those concerns. Then you respond within the given timelines that you've been given. And thereafter, if you don't, the commissioner must give you a decision within 16 days from the date you raised your objection. And then thereafter, you can go to the tax appeals tribunal and maybe court thereafter. Now, a decision is made, there's a proper process. Now, this position that now KRA wants is that you're given a shorter time period of 7 days, remembering that under the law, it is you to prove. The burden of the onus lies on the taxpayer, not on the commissioner, to prove that you have actually paid tax. And then they say you must have submitted all reasonable documents. What is reasonable documents? Because you could submit everything that you have, and then the commissioner either requires you to submit information that is not within your ambit, or you don't have access to, or you can't access, or they give you extraneous things that you may not be able to submit within the limitation of the 7-day period. Why limit to such a short time period, where while it's the onus is on the taxpayer to be able to discharge his duty or discharge that burden of proof that he's actually paid his taxes? And then going further is the beauty of once you submit that objection, it prevents KRA from the commissioner going forth with the objection, with giving you the agency notice, because at least it gives you some time to prepare yourself and present your books before the KRA. The challenge for the taxpayer is the limitation of time period that you're supposed to respond. And further, the fact that an agency notice can proceed irrespective of you even going before the tax appeals tribunal, you must still look further for an injunction to stop KRA.
So,
and looking at that 7-day period.
Yeah.
So if you don't get it within that short time, 7-day period, or we'll be looking at a situation where irrespective of the submissions you're making, you will be in court already, or looking to go to court to look for that injunction.
If I understand you, your basic sort of argument in this, what you have an issue is with the timeline, that you've stipulated they've reduced it from 16 to 7, but then again, you don't understand, they don't give an exact definition of what sort of documents, what sort of things that they'll be wanting. If that was to be included, would that make more sense with the reduced time?
The rule of law.
Yeah.
You see, the beauty of having, once you get an automatic stay once you file at the tax appeals tribunal, it enables the taxpayer to have the right to a fair hearing, because you're before a neutral arbiter, and he will hear both of you before the final decision is made whether you are paying those taxes or not. But the fact that irrespective of you being before the tax appeals tribunal, a KRA can proceed with the agency agency notice, and effect, you would end up paying taxes that probably it's not your lawful liability to pay, because there have been instances whereby KRA has assessed you and maybe it's not the right assessment, but because of the processes that you go through, you end up even having a longer period to be able to prove your case, and then it's fair at least for the taxpayer, because once the burden is already placed on the taxpayer and you're trying to limit his ability to discharge that burden, then it's, you know, it's already an imbalance. And so, to be fair also to the taxpayer, I think that should totally be scrapped out, because the processes that are there still work. KRA is able to still clamp down on people who have not paid tax. And even, I thought the move even to have an arbitration ADR system under KRA was much better, because it gives even parties an opportunity to sit and also agree if you have to pay the taxes on a payment plan. So limiting this, I don't think the aim is to actually help people pay taxes or KRA meet the targets. I think it'll end up making a lot of people pay taxes that they're not actually liable to. And anyone who can tell you that getting a refund from KRA,
it's a tall order. I mean, fair enough. Good thing I've also had the opportunity to attend these public forums, and of course this is an issue that most corporates are not necessarily comfortable with because of just the logistics that goes into sorting everything out. But if there's one proposal that LSK is also again rejecting, but quite a number of people agree to it to some extent, it's the eco levy. And this is basically to see to it that companies and corporates that participate in business but their products or their services sort of have some negative effect in the environment, they get to pay something to see to it that this is actually curbing the fight against climate change. But then again, you have an issue with this. I understand that the semantics of the ripple effect on the users and the cost being transferred, but would you not welcome this to see to it that we actually start moving towards that climate change?
Well, we are collecting a levy, but the question is, where is that money going? So in the proposals, have we seen any regulations saying that this money is going to be collected, it will be set, there will be this eco-levy fund, it will be used to manage waste and disposal, or rehabilitate, or invest in ensuring this kind of waste is well disposed. There's nothing like that.
I've seen you've given an example in your proposals of the situation in Ghana.
And we have said, until this is done, shelve it, because we'll be collecting revenue for revenue's sake. You're not collecting revenue for the purpose of ensuring that you actually make a positive change with regards to that amount of money you're collecting. So this amount of money is just a levy for the sake of government being able to get money and put in their purse. Okay, so put it into Kenyan context. Hopefully somebody from KRA is listening, so put it into Kenyan context of what you talked about in Ghana, how you'd like to see it right here so that this levy can make sense to you. We want to see regulations saying that we are collecting this money, it will be set in a separate fund, and this is what will be done. If it's on cell phones, this is how we'll ensure that those cell phones are, waste management is collected. This is done for whatever waste that the government feels is against climate change. So if you set up a fund, identify what the fund will be used for, how we'll manage waste disposal in the country, so that we're actually seeing that this eco levy is actually being used for the purpose in which it's being collected.
Okay.
Right now, no one is telling you what it's going to be used for. So our proposal as LSK is shelve this first, create a proper structure, know what you want to do. Instead of collecting money, then we'll think about it along the way. Because as long as we let the government go without holding them accountable now, there'll be no way to hold them accountable later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, Faith, I mean, 90% of your proposals or the proposals within finance bill, you've rejected them as the society. I mean, something has to have something good. And just finally, before I wrap this up, I know I'm out of time, but Faith, what do you like in this bill that you can say, you know what, pass it as soon as yesterday?
I'm not going to say pass it as soon as yesterday, because we have highlighted several instances where we think this bill is not good for the people of Kenya.
Is there anything you like that you say is good for the people?
What we have said we like is there's the advanced pricing agreement, advanced pricing agreements tax that is going to be there on transaction. And we have said this will help reduce disputes that are there normally on transfer pricing. So we have said that one we welcome it, we appreciate, and we tell the government spot on. And I think there are certain also technical areas that we have told the government that that's progressive. But I know there was that discussion on, I saw KBA talking about mobile money transactions. And you may think financial services is an elite service, but I say government should think about it rudimentary and break down the semantics. When you look at what studies have been done before, in fact, when a lot of money has been opened to the economy because of mobile money transaction. Equity will tell you that they have opened most of their banks or their smaller shops next to the marketplaces, because a farmer is able to take a loan using their phone, then be able to pay for goods, get it back, and pay back the loan within the day. You're able to send money home and various small transactions. And even looking at COVID, some of the beauty of innovations on financial services, now when you want to tax the on excise duty on any transactions on the national payment platform systems, you look at the unbanked who rely on financial services, who rely on mobile money financial services. They'll be the people that will be hurt the most. And if you look at our economy, where majority are relying on mobile financial services, Fuliza amongst others, then
the people down there.
It'll be them who will be hurt the most.
Alrighty, well, we've had it right there from Faith, who's the LSK president right there, basically being smart about her answers, because, you know, the LSK has to be the watchdog. She says there's certain technical bits that they agree with the government, but overall they've highlighted what they do not agree, and give or take, I put it at about 95%. Hopefully their sentiments are echoed in the final draft report that will be presented to our legislators for debate. We take a short break. We come back with some sports news in a short while.